Okay, welcome back. What we're going to be doing today is that we're going to be going over the InDesign tools and what they do, basically kind of like an introduction to InDesign. So what I have here basically is we've got our toolbar right over here, this guy here, and it's just like the toolbar in Photoshop. You see you mouse over stuff and you get basically the explanations of what the tools do. So you got your selection tool, the direct selection tool. I'm just going to take this off. You got the pen tool, the type tool, the pencil tool, and of course any of these guys where you've got little fly-offs there, those little black corner bars on the bottom. These guys are kind of like tear-outs. You've got a flyout menu that gives you more options with that particular tool. For example, the pencil tool, smooths lines. The erase tool will erase lines and objects. It's nice to have. If you're going to do that kind of vector work, you probably should do it more often in Illustrator than anything else, just to keep things nice and clean. Line tool, and we'll pop up. There we go. Rectangle frame. You've got the ellipse tool, and you see you've got the when you mouse over the little letters in the brackets, those are the shortcuts. So if I was to hit L, it would go to the ellipse tool. And again, you've got a little fly out here, so if I click and hold, I can get a rectangle, which is shortcut M, and a polygon tool. There's a shortcut, but it's not listed, and I do not know what it is. And so anyway, and I'll show you shortcuts in a second. And then you got the rotation tool, the scale tool, which flies out. And we'll get it here to pop up, which turns into the shear tool. So scale is S, shear is O. Scale will scale things up and down, like making them big or small. Shear will throw them at an angle. And the top and bottom, as for example, if I was to shear a box, the top and bottom of the box would be parallel to each other. The sides would be at an angle. Scissors tool, basically this is your free transform tool, E, very powerful tool. Your gradient tool, and this is an interesting one here. This is a feather gradient. So in CS3 and CS4 you can apply transparent gradients directly inside InDesign. Nice to have, but I'd strongly recommend using Adobe Photoshop to do all of your image editing. Gradient feathers still can give you problems when you export stuff out to PDFs. So just a word of caution. Note tool, you can put notes and stuff. Your eyedropper tool, pick up colors from images and stuff, and this flies out also. You can have a measure tool, you measure stuff. You want to measure things like on a diagonal. It's really hard to do with your ruler tools, so you use this measure tool. The hand tool, of course, and the magnification tool. Down here you've got these guys. This is your color boxes. This is the fill color right in here, the guy in the foreground, and this little guy back here just with basically a box with a black stroke around it. Well, that's your stroke. And down here, this is basically your text. You can select text, and then you can change the color of your text. You can also go over here, and when you select on that one, this is actually objects. You can paint objects, paint text. Down here, this is actually your colors you can choose, and you can fly out, apply color, apply gradient, apply none. There's a shortcut for that. I believe apply color is a comma, apply gradient is a period, and apply none is the forward slash. You must be careful when you're doing this stuff, because if you were typing, for example, and you hit a period, well, that's just going to not apply a gradient, it's going to give a period in your text box. So this kind of stuff here, these shortcuts get kind of weird. And this guy down here, these are different views. You've got normal view, a preview, and I'll show you that in a second, a bleed and a slug. And we'll go through these later on, but these are kind of how you go through your preview states, how you view the actual document when you're laying it out. So that is a toolbar, and you can pick and drag this guy up. If I click on this guy right here, I can make it go over horizontally across the screen, or I can click it again and double it up, so it's all doubled up and it takes up less real estate. For example, if I have a smaller monitor, and then I can hit it again and it goes and just rotates through. So these little arrows here are modifiers for the actual tool palettes themselves. So I'm going to go back to this guy. I'm just going to slide it over here. I can drag it around. I should be able to actually dock it other places too. So that's that guy there. So that's your toolbar. Now, right up in here, this chunk, this top part, you'll find in CS4 that everything looks the same. That the graphic user interface for Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign is relatively the same. Just some of the tools have changed a bit. and the locations. So this guy right across here, well, this is your application bar. This thing right up here. This tells you what's going on, and you can actually open the bridge by just mousing over that. The bridge is interesting. We'll get to that later. It's basically an asset management tool. So you're able to visually see all the pictures in a folder, all that kind of stuff. If you're running 4 or 5 applications at once and your machine isn't that fast, this guy will slow everything down for you. So you do have to be careful. Take some time to load up. Your zoom level, your view options. You can see the frame edges, which are the edges of your image boxes. You can hide them. You can see the rulers. You can see the guides. The guides you're going to use to line stuff up with. Your smart guides, they snap and etc. Your baseline grid, which is basically, it comes a lot from typography. We'll get to that later. Hidden characters, always good to see. Those are basically your soft returns and your hard returns and your paragraph spacing, all that kind of stuff when you're formatting documents. This guy here, basically this is the same information as down here. You got normal, preview, slug, and bleed. Right down here, same thing. And I go down here, and it takes a while. Normal, preview, slug, and bleed. So these are just your previewed options. This guy right up here, well, this is, say I have multiple documents open so I'm going back and forth. I can view them individually. I can tile them all into a grid. I can tile them all vertically. I can tile them all horizontally. I can consolidate them all into one nice thing. I have different layout options, say if I'm doing different bits and pieces. I can mess with it. It really depends on what you want to do. If you're managing huge amounts of InDesign files all at once, this is just a nice way to organize stuff on your screen page. Right over here on this side, the essentials, it says, well, it's going to default to essentials, I believe, when you open it up. You can click on this, and this basically just gives you different tool sets. If I go to book, it's going to refresh and it's going to give me a whole new different tool set. Books, paragraph styles, for example, object styles, text wrapping, the stroke and the swatches. It's going to give me index, conditional indents, hyperlinks, bookmarks. A lot of this stuff we're going to cover. Go back to essentials, it flops it back to essentials. When it's in essentials, basically it's just the bare bones of InDesign. And notice how it's all icon driven, so all the pages and everything else, they're a little click on. If I click on pages, for example, it brings out the links, the pages themselves. There's no pages yet, of course. Click on the stroke, it gives me the stroke, weight, the color, options, the color, all that kind of stuff. If I go to advanced, for example, well, there you go, there's nothing there because this is the one that I use all the time in my particular. I believe if I was to go down here, and if I reset advanced, you can modify these on the fly, and if you ever mess up and you want to get back to where it was, reset it. There's my advanced stuff. So now I've got paragraph styles, character styles, object styles, all this kind of stuff is all here. Different settings will give you different default views right off the shot. So, and you can actually mess with this stuff. You can reset advanced. You can make a new workspace for yourself. So these are the workspace options. And this guy right here, this will do a search. Basically, it's for like help or anything like that. So it will connect you to Adobe.com, the Adobe forums. So that's the application bar right across the top. This guy here, the second one. And notice if you see any of these guys, these little divots, I can click and drag all this stuff out, so I can modify this and I can pull this off. So everything is flexible. I can drag everything around, I can bring it to the bottom, I can, it depends. The top will automatically see when I drag this stuff up, you get that nice little blue halo effect right on the top there. I'm going to bring that up, snap it in, I can bring it in, snap this one in, etc. So this is just how it defaults, so I just leave it for this just for the sake of the tutorials. Right, so now what we have is basically the control panel itself, which is this chunk right across here. The control panel basically varies with your tool selection depending on your settings. Now the default setting is this stuff. You've got basically, this is your where your reference points are. If I was scaling something, if I make the reference point in the center, it's going to scale from the center. If I click on here, you see it changes. That reference point is going to change to the, say, well, that's the top left-hand corner. So it's going to scale everything from the top left-hand corner and drag everything out that way. So I'm just going to leave that to the center. X and Y coordinates, basically on your ruler, you're going to have an X and a Y.